Court is aware, the district attorney agreed to cap it at 8 years. The people are asking for 8 years on this case. Your Honor, the defendant has been rejected from community corrections. He's been rejected from recovery court and from the behavioral health court. And so the options before the court today are either Department of Corrections or probation. The people do not think that a probationary sentence is appropriate on this case for numerous reasons. First, the defendant was not compliant with pretrial supervision on this case in the sense that he absconded from these pending matters for a period of almost a year and a half. The defendant failed to appear on March 15th of 2021 and reappeared on these cases in June of 2022. I'd like to direct the court's attention to the surety for defendant motion for remission that was filed on January 25th of 2022. That document, Your Honor, details the efforts that the surety made to locate the defendant, indicating that he reached out to the defendant's mother, the co-signer of the bond, and indicated the defendant had taken off to Mexico, which that person was aware was not correct. The surety made numerous attempts to determine where Mr. Hass was living in Kansas. A recovery team contacted the owner at a trailer who believed Mr. Hass was living in that trailer park. The numerous efforts ultimately yielded the defendant being brought to court, but additionally, Your Honor, the defendant did have a new felony case charged against him while in Kansas. I don't have any information about that case. However, it is worth noting that while on probation for the 2019 CR 4467 case, the defendant has been now charged with 3 felonies. The 2 cases before the court, an additional case that was ultimately dismissed as part of a global disposition on these cases, and also the Kansas case that is charged as a felony as well. So I apologize, that's 4 felonies. I don't think that any of these facts go towards the defendant being given another opportunity on probation. The facts of these cases, Judge, are also extremely concerning, and the people have concerns for the defendant contacting the named victim in this case. The facts of this case, Your Honor, and the people are referencing 20 CR 2625. On that case, Your Honor, the defendant has pled guilty to second-degree assault strangulation. It's aggravated, so I believe it would be in the 4 to 12 range. The people did agree to cap at 8 years, which is within that range. And the reason being, Your Honor, is the facts of this case do bear mentioning. The victim indicated that the defendant lunged for her in the dark after she went to their apartment. He stated to her, "I wish that I could just knock you out." The defendant touched her sexually without her consent and said, "At least let me get my last nut." At that time, Your Honor, the victim was 3 months pregnant. She told me in part of our discussions that she was concerned in going to a follow-up appointment that they would not find the baby's heartbeat. That's because of the treatment that she received by the defendant in that he strangled and assaulted her both physically and sexually during that case. 21 CR 581, that case was ultimately pled to a violation of bail bond conditions, which is a class 6 felony, and reckless endangerment and criminal mischief. On that case, Your Honor, the defendant approached the victim who had their baby at that point. The defendant was angry because the victim would not permit him to see their child. The victim and the baby were in the vehicle, and the defendant shattered the car window while the baby was inside. All of these facts, Your Honor, are extremely concerning behaviors to the people. The people have no faith whatsoever that if given another opportunity on probation, the defendant will be able to be monitored safely in the community based on his actions during the pendency of these cases. It's concerning that not only while on probation for one matter and then on pretrial supervision on 20 CR 2625, he picks up another 2 cases before this court and then absconds and goes to Kansas. Ultimately, Your Honor, the court has to consider the nature of the offense, the rehabilitative potential of the defendant, the development and respect for the law, and the deterrence of crime. And I know that the court has those in front of it, those considerations in front of it today. So the people are asking for that 8-year Department of Correction sentence. The people don't do that lightly, Your Honor, but this behavior cannot be tolerated in our communities. We did speak with the named victim in this case. She did not want to address the court directly as she was nervous to do so. However, she is observing the proceedings today. She indicated that she is grateful that sentencing is finally happening here and she can have peace. In the beginning, she had a lot of anger and wanted to get justice, but now she's just glad that she and her son are safe. And she's also glad that Anna Engage, the defendant's ex-wife and first son, can also get justice. It's not just about her and her son, but everyone impacted. She's glad to finally have peace that she's been waiting for. She's relieved it's finally happening and he can get the help that he needs. With respect to sentencing, the victim's input here was that she wanted a Department of Correction sentence. She had concerns about the defendant being out of custody. And I don't blame her based on the impact that the defendant has had on her life over the last 4 years, or 5 years from 2019.
Oh, I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Judge, if I can have just one moment.
Is he going up yet?
No, not yet. They're asking for 8 years.
Oh, she needs way more than that.
I know.
Thank you. Your Honor, I just wanted to double check some information. Thank you for the opportunity. So I will start with that. The prosecutor talked about the motion from the surety. I don't think that contains complete information. Mr. Haas did go to the state of Kansas. He went there to pick up his now fiance, who is here in the courtroom. That's who I was just speaking to her. Her name is Jennifer Olaha. He was there for about 3 weeks. Her husband had passed away. They have been friends since they were children. And she called him and he went out there to help her get through the funeral,
Rob House's,
her husband's death. And then ultimately
Really
was to bring her back to Colorado. He was stopped and arrested for the Kansas case, which involved controlled substances. So I want to kind of correct that information. Mr. Haas, and Your Honor, at some point I'm going to need the court to put the screen on my desk if the court doesn't mind. We'll see if it works today.
You ready?
I'm ready. Same problem as last week. I will try the people's.
Whatever.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay.
He fled to Kansas to help her fucking rob houses and do meth, and
Why are they even bringing that up?
because they were trying to say that because the like our side was saying like we don't think he needs probation. He's ran,
Okay,
you know.
thank
and,
you.
And he went to Kansas
Mr.
and picked
Haas
up more
is
charges.
here to take responsibility. But there
So they're
is
saying
always
he went
two
to
sides
Kansas.
to a story. And so I want to talk to the court a little bit about the context in which all of these allegations were happening. Mr. Haas was dealing with a mental illness and a substance abuse addiction, and I'm going to talk to you about that a little more in depth at the end. Like I said, he is here to take full responsibility for his actions, which include putting his hands over the victim's mouth in this case. He doesn't contest that. He doesn't deny that. But I think it's important for the court to understand how that all came to be, especially in light of the number of affidavits that this court has likely read and the context given in the pretrial report, since it does go through each of the cases, even the dismissed cases. The victim in this case also has mental health issues and also was struggling with drug addiction at the time. I was given a video that was taken by Mr. Haas and sent to his mother that shows the alleged victim after taking controlled substance almost non-responsive, and Mr. Haas trying to wake her up. That occurred after the first event. So I'd like to take you kind of through that. But first, let me give you some additional context. In this relationship, there was a lot of jealousy. A lot of jealousy coming from the alleged victim. Discovery contains texts in which she tells him several times to go back to Autumn. That would be his stepsister. She operated under the belief that there was some sort of affair going on between them. She also had jealousy that's noted in these text messages for another friend of his by the name of Cammie. She also went through a horrible period of postpartum depression, which I think impacted a lot of the things that happened here in a lot of ways that she viewed what was happening in a more negative way than perhaps she would have had she not, unfortunately, had to go through that. There are also text messages that talk about how if his mother, Mr. Haas's mother, Karen Gallegos, is going to take her son, meaning Jack, who is the child of the victim and Mr. Haas, that she is going to take away her son. That is also sort of floating around in the background. I have information from several parties, including Ms. Gallegos, that there have been many times when Mr. Haas has been seen with scratches and bite marks on him that he attributed to the alleged victim. So this is a two-way street, and by saying that, we are in no way minimizing Mr. Haas's actions. He's going to talk to you and he's going to tell you what he did was wrong and that he's embarrassed about what he did.
There were defense.
I also think it's important to know
and the cops
that
even
when
said that.
The victim spoke with the people, she told the people that she had been vindictive and she blew this out of proportion because she, during her pregnancy, was not able to take lithium and she had to stop that, and that she was feeling suicidal, and that Mr. Haas told her he wasn't going to let her hurt herself, but she was afraid that he would get her committed on a mental health hold. So that's sort of what's going on in context to these events. So I want to show the court pictures. This first set of pictures, this is from the first case, which is the 20 CR 2625, in which Mr. Haas has admitted to placing his hands over her mouth. In that particular event, from Mr. Haas's perspective, she was suicidal that day. He was trying to basically help her, and a physical argument erupted. And Mr. Haas, when she began yelling she was going to call the police, put his hands over her mouth. It's my belief that he didn't do that very hard. That doesn't change the fact he did it, but I do think that's a mitigator. The court's looking at photographs right now that were taken during that event, and the court can see there are two small lacerations, one on the top lip and one on the bottom lip. Also taken that day, the court can see a small sort of abrasion under her knee, and then the thigh photograph that is supposed to show a bruise. I frankly can't see a bruise, but that's what it's supposed to depict. Going on to that day, she has a small scratch on her arm. These are injuries that Mr. Haas was photographed as having received that day. The court can see he's got numerous injuries to his hand, a small injury to his back. He's got injuries to both the side and the front of his neck, and a cut to his finger.
Yeah, because he was punching my walls. I had holes in my walls bigger than my face.
That were found in discovery that document
these are
Mr.
pictures
Haas
that he
saying
took?
that
Yeah.
it was actually
Digging
his
them.
stuff
Yeah.
that was destroyed. That's a photograph from his cell phone that was sent to a recipient, and the next one is going to be a photograph from, I'm sorry, Aaron, give me one moment. Just screwed up the slideshow. And this is out of Discovery. Here we go. So I'm pointing that out, Your Honor, because the alleged victim indicated the property that was destroyed was hers. Some of the property was.
That was my
but part of
apartment.
what kicked off this encounter was that she destroyed his computer systems. He is a computer programmer by trade. And so we had this desk.
Oh
that you
my
can see there.
fucking
It
God.
was a glass top desk that contained several different monitors and his laptop. Those were destroyed by her, which obviously didn't make him very happy with her, and contributed to what
Like,
happened.
what
But
is your
obviously
fucking
this is
point?
not, to say that she deserved what happened to her in any way, but it is
It's
to say
fucking-
that there were many exaggerations that were told to the police by the alleged victim. These photographs are from the September 23rd, 2020 incidents. Those are all the next couple slides are all encapsulated under 20 CR 4107. That case was ultimately dismissed. It does contain 3 different events. This is the first in that series under that case number, where she alleged that he and she had a struggle over her phone and that he took her phone. Ultimately, she calls the police back and tells the police that she actually found her phone in her car. Next, that is from December 9th, 2020. On that particular day, she indicated that she invited Mr. Haas over to fix some items in her house and to wash his clothes. And then
I didn't have a
said
washer
that
and dryer.
there was some altercation that led to injury. I think the court can see there doesn't appear to be any injury. I recognize there's some small pieces of skin that are a little red, but other than that, there are no injuries. And Mr. Haas did not do anything to her on that day. Before we get to that, Your Honor, I want to talk to you a little bit about Mr. Haas. So I've already told the court that Mr. Haas struggles with mental health. He was diagnosed as bipolar back in 2017, back when he was 17, by Kaiser Permanente. He and his family have been through a long struggle with his mental illness. He has been prescribed a variety of things, including levels of lithium that were so high, the doctors had to continue to test him to make sure it wasn't damaging his liver. The medication regimen that he had been on was not working. It didn't control his mental health, and he went off of it, and he was off of it during this time frame. The biggest blessing for Mr. Haas has been going to jail, because the jail actually got him on a regimen that works. They have him on a 3 medication regimen
Oh, wow.
that is highly effective. I've spoken
He's just so blessed.
to
Yeah.
his
He's a
fiance,
saint
Jennifer,
now,
who, as I said,
since he
has
went
known
to
him
jail.
practically all of his life. She's seen the ups and downs. She's seen the mental health, and she agrees that this is the regimen that works. I can tell you as his counsel, since meeting Mr. Haas,
What the
when I first met him, he
fuck?
was not in a good place mentally. Once he started taking this regimen, he is a very different person. And
What
today,
the
if I met him on the street, I don't
fuck?
think I would know that he was mentally ill.
Like,
And this is really working for him. His mother's also going to talk to you in a little bit
Oh, and that
about
dumb
her
bitch is
observations
gonna
with
come
that
on here.
as well. I think that's extremely important because, as the court's aware,
Yeah,
people
the one
with
that
mental
didn't give a
illness
fuck
have to be on
that
the
her
right
son was
medications in
literally
order for their
trying to
mental
beat someone
illness
to
to
death.
be controlled. And he is finally
She's
on the
great
right
about
medication and is finally thinking clearly, and finally in a place where he can move on with his life and better himself and focus on himself. I've spoken with his wife, his fiance, and she is totally in concurrence with that, and wants him to go to a program that I'm going to speak to you about, and understands that they still will not be physically together for some time, but she is willing to put him first so that he can put himself first and continue to work on himself. Besides having the mental health issues, Mr. Haas also had some addiction issues as well. I think that's pretty obvious by the fact that he was arrested in Kansas for use of methamphetamine. And essentially what he was doing, like many mentally ill people, was self-medicating.
What about robbing people's houses?
During this entire time period, when all of these cases happened, while he was gone from the court's jurisdiction, he continued to self-medicate. And now that he's in custody, he is sober. I don't think the court's naive enough to believe there are no drugs at the jail. But Mr. Haas has not been engaging in any consumption of any sort of drugs other than the ones that he's been prescribed.
Oh, Lord
Mr.
Jesus.
Haas is a very intelligent man. He has a bachelor's degree. He is fully able to work in computer science, but he hasn't been doing that because his mental illness was so undermining his ability to be a functional person in society. It is his passion. It's what he loves. It's what he's frankly obsessed with, is programming.
And
And he
hacking.
would like to get back to that. But
He
also
likes to
knows
hack
that he
people.
has to be reintegrated in the community, and he needs to put his substance abuse recovery and his mental health first before
What
he
the
can even
fuck?
imagine jumping back into a career, a job, or even being with his hopefully soon-to-be wife. He has been accepted into Christ Life Ministries in Pueblo. I think the name of it is a little misleading. Christ Life Ministries is a program that I think is maybe best described as a private community corrections facility. They have programming where he will live at their house, which actually coincidentally happens to be the old housing for Pueblo's Community Corrections Facility. In that program, he'll be provided housing. They will connect him with mental health. They will connect him with drug and alcohol. They will have him do life skills classes. They will also assist him with making a transition into the community for work. I think what's unique about this program is this program treats everyone as an individual. They do not take any sort of cookie cutter approach. I spoke with them on the phone
I think she's
because
trying
I
to
did
get
have
him
concerns
probation.
that if
And do
they
that.
wanted him to go out to work, that might leave behind his mental health, because he does have to pay rent at the program. What they told me is they will prioritize what he needs, and they will find ways to get him grants or other things to pay for his rent. Their priority is making sure that all their clients get what they need first in
Did
order to
your
be successful.
Person already talked for you?
And I do have a few clips to show you from this.
I was just gonna have her speak on my behalf, but now I'm gonna clarify something, a few things that they want to throw around. Like, no, dude.
By Samson. As someone in long-term recovery,
Let me restart that, Your Honor. If the court would like, I can bring this up to the court. So the court can
However
hear.
you want to present it is fine.
Can the court hear it?
I can hear it, yeah.
Okay.
I don't see it on the screen, but that's okay. If it's audio, I can.
It's a single,
They're all full
it's
of
just a
shit.
slide. They don't have any other visuals.
those struggling with substance use and abuse, CLM is a recipient of the SOAR grant provided by SAMHSA. As someone in long-term recovery, Susanna Bealey works as an in-office peer recovery navigator and helps guide clients on their path to recovery. She has worked hard to establish many community resources, partnerships, and
Or is he
training
not charged
opportunities
with
to
robbing
offer.
houses?
Services include, but are not limited to, prevention strategies and skills, sober living, inpatient and outpatient treatment, medication-assisted treatment, shelter, food, clothing, and identification documents. In addition to locating resources in the community, Susanna facilitates moral recognition therapy and community enforcement and family training. MRT and CRAFT provide an additional tool for people with a substance use disorder and their loved ones to overcome obstacles related to addiction.
So, Your Honor, part of what that talked about is they also have in-house requirements. They do have MRT classes that each of their inpatient clients is required to take. That's in addition to outpatient
Like, and
substance
it's
abuse
sickening
classes.
that you're like trying to
If,
help him
the
get off
client
easy
needs
after
inpatient substance
years.
abuse classes,
Like,
they
even
will also
before
make
me,
arrangements
like
for that
years
and
with
hold the
Anna
bed at the
bullshit.
facility until
And you're
the
trying to help
individual
him
is
get
able to
off
complete any
easy. Like,
inpatient
let
that
him
is
do
deemed
his
necessary.
sentence.
I was also informed that they do UA testing at the house because a condition of being at the house is sobriety. They will not let anyone who's not sober stay at the facility. They do cooperate with parole and probation, so they're able to report back to probation about his progress so long as they have signed waivers. Mr. Haas has already completed those waivers. They provide transportation to and from mental health, drug and alcohol treatment. They even provide transportation to get medications. They will also provide him with transportation via bus tickets back and forth to Denver until he can get his
fucking
probation
God, dude.
transferred down to Pueblo if the court is inclined to grant him probation.
Metanoia House requires a $250 non-refundable intake fee at move-in, and $200
So can the
a week
judge
in
see
rent.
your messages?
I think
Christ
it
Life
says
Ministries
everybody.
no longer holds the wages grant in Pueblo, but staff works closely with other agencies to assist clients in supplementing housing until they can do so. Clients that are enrolled in and compliant with housing and supervisory agency expectations can apply for housing subsidies or vouchers through parole, probation, lead, wages, and other third-party agencies to assist them with payment. To be eligible for the housing program, clients must complete the application process, be self-sufficient, be willing to participate in
Oh, I
weekly
feel like I
meetings,
shouldn't even
be drug,
have to,
alcohol, or
though, you
tobacco
know?
free, and have or be able to obtain an resource. Staffing and other restrictions, CLM cannot house those required to register as
I know I
an
wasn't
SUV.
fucking jealous. I was
Take
literally
all of our
telling him, like,
advances.
you can go be with other people. Like I was
Metanoia
encouraging
House
him.
requires a
Because you hated him so
Yeah,
much.
yeah. And I was just like, dude, like, I want you to go find somebody else.
Your
And
Honor,
I was being
as the court
nice. And
can imagine, we are asking the court for a term of probation with completion of Christ Life Ministries program as a specific condition of that. Mr. Haas, I know, very much wants to go to this program. Ms. Polaric from C3 assisted him in getting into this program. I agree
Dude,
that
fuck
this is
all
a
of
very
you.
good program for him. She also believes that this is a good program for him. Until Mr. Haas's case, I had not heard of Christ Life Ministries, which is why I did call and speak with them. And I can tell you I was impressed. I have been doing this a long time, and I'm kind of a hard to impress at this point. Their program, I think the strength of part of their program is not just that they do drug and alcohol. Also, they allow him to get the mental health treatment, but they have wraparound services, which is, I think, what a lot of the programming is missing. They'll help him transition. They'll help him get life skills, which I think he is missing because he has been in a mental health crisis since he was about 17. So he doesn't have a lot of those skills
Like,
that he
he's a
needs to be
victim?
successful in life.
what?
They will help him do that as well. And again, they're not going to just pressure him, shove him out the door to get a job. They're going to work with him. And once that he's stable enough and has
This
his
motherfucker doesn't
programs
need to
in
be in
place,
society.
then slowly he will go out to work. With that, Your Honor, I would ask the court to hear from Karen Gallegos. That is Mr.
Oh
Haas's
my
mother.
God. Here we go.
Oh, man.
Thank you.
Hi, Your Honor.
Afternoon.
Well, we began this journey back, Justin was probably about 13 when all this had started. A little reference on both sides of Justin's family, on his father's side, his grandmother, she's, I'm not quite sure what her diagnosis is, but she's also on lithium. My grandmother, which would have been his great grandmother, was paranoid schizophrenic. She was
They're just
a mess until they
Making it
finally got
worse.
her. She was actually on a regimen of lithium and Prozac. My grandmother, I never knew her that way because by the time I came around, she was medicated and lived out a perfect life. Same with his grandmother on his father's side.
And they hate her.
His sister has
Justin's
been
dad's
diagnosed,
family hates
and
her.
we're working with
It's the mom.
treatment to get her
So it's funny she's
anxiety
talking
and
on their
levels
behalf. They
worked
hate
out
her.
also.
His parents aren't together.
We've done with
His
many
mom-
types
his
of
dad
treatments
hates
with
her.
Justin, and I
She
believe
sounds
out
like
of
the
seeing
dumbest
what
kid.
he has gone through, what he has progressed with this regiment that they have him on. He's
Is she
clear.
up there?
He's ready to be a productive person in
The
society.
blonde.
He's dealt with his anger issues. He's learned on what types of medications that he needs to take for the rest of his life. And Justin has said, I will be on this for the rest of my life. I believe that Justin has learned that he is the only person that can actually help himself. And with his faith that he is reconnected with, which we were all very pleased with, I believe that Justin will be a very productive person in society. He's very intelligent. There's not a lot that he cannot accomplish when he puts his mind to it. I want to thank you guys for all your time, all the efforts that the court system has spent with Justin. I believe he has benefited immensely from this process. Justin is very strong, family-based, and will always have the support to guide him
Family based.
and help him through whatever fails and prosperous he makes. We will all be there. He wants to be a good example to his two boys, and eventually, maybe someday, be reintroduced into their lives.
Fuck you.
There's many hours of conversations that
You'll never
Justin
meet
and I
my
have
son.
had over the
No.
last year and a half. Justin has realized what his trigger points are, his patterns. He's pointed them out to me numerous times, and what he does differently now. The therapy and the support, I think that this program can also tie up the rest of the avenues that he needs to live a productive and healthy life.
Thank you.
Just a few final comments before I would ask you to hear from Mr. Haas himself. I want to let you know that he also has another person here to support him today, Denise Simone. She's actually helping out with the grandchildren who are outside, but she is here. She's a close family friend. She's known him for about 15 years. She mirrors all the comments that his mother made when she and I spoke. But she is a person who is a spiritual person and working on becoming a minister. And I spoke with her specifically about Justin's new connection in his spirituality. And what she had to say is that she recognizes it as being real, not an attempt to fool anyone or an attempt to get out of anything, but it is real. And they've had conversations and continue to have conversations about spiritual topics. And that is also in particular why we think this program would be a good fit for Mr. Haas. Finally, Ms. Gallegos is willing to transport Mr. Haas from the jail to Pueblo. So that piece shouldn't be a worry for the court. The only obstacle at this point is that he does have a case out of Arapahoe County that I'm trying to get him writted in on. We've requested a writ. We anticipate it will be resolved fairly shortly. It's a probation revocation. And so we're hoping that they will give a concurrent sentence. So I'm mentioning that because there will be some delay in him getting to the program, but his mom's obviously willing to pick him up from whatever jail she needs to pick him up from. And whenever that happens, Christ Life will hold this bed for him for a month. After that, he would have to reapply. We are hopeful that we can get him there within the month. Otherwise,
Oh my God.
we will be reapplying for him to get into the program. They just can't hold a bed more than a month. And with that, Mr. Haas would like to address the court.
You may.
Your Honor, I seek forgiveness not easily given, as words cannot mend the scars that I have created. An apology for this. I feel the guilt that bears the weight of 1,000 life sentences. I
He
take full
sounds
responsibility
so
for my
like
actions, and
you
I am
can
ashamed
tell
not only of the
from the
way that
first
I
word.
reacted,
He doesn't mean
but
shit he's
also
saying.
that I allowed myself to be consumed by addiction and mental illness. I have battled my whole life, not knowing until the past year what it
He's
meant to be
reading off a
sober.
script.
I believe that I have found myself, though I am still weak and I need help. I ask for the opportunity to better myself instead of putting me in an environment not suited for recovery. I failed my family, I failed my sons, I ruined the hopes and dreams of both the mothers of my sons, and for that, a simple sorry will not cut. But I owe it to everyone to raise myself above the influence, participate in therapy, and stay dedicated to taking my medication in hopes that one day I will be worthy of repentance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Honor. The victim has just changed her mind and would like to address the court. She's on the WebEx as Jaylene Tattolini.
Well, I mean, we have a procedure and process and order, but okay, sure, she may. And if the defense wants the last word, that's for the defense to have.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hello, Your Honor.
Jaylene, if you'd like to address the court, now is the time.
Can you hear me? Oh, I don't know. I don't know if it's working.
I see that you're unmuted, so you should be able to speak.
Are you able to hear me now? Oh my God, sister.
Did you wish to address the court?
Your Honor, my victim witness specialist is indicating that on her end, the audio can be heard. So I'm not sure. Is it possible the audio is on
Yeah.
the DA's
thank you.
table?
I should have it now. Okay, I apologize. All right, go ahead. If you'd start again, please.
Hi, Your Honor. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Hi.
State your name. Begin with your name for the record, if you would.
My name is Jaylene Tattolini.
you.
So I didn't want to address the court just because I wanted to just kind of get straight to the point when I spoke with my victim's advocate lady. You know, in a whole, I just wanted to, you know, say that Anna and I and the boys have all found some kind of relief after all this time dealing with pretty much the nightmare that we've had to go through with this individual. And that's just really all I wanted to say, but I wanted to also clarify something. I honestly don't feel that they are being genuine because of one thing. When the whole me being suicidal thing, Justin had me he came up with a story that I had to go take to the cops to try to take my first statement back so that he wouldn't get in trouble. And at the time, I was trying to be as compliant with him because I'm a first time mom. I had a newborn baby. I was stuck in this very abusive cycle, and I at the time I didn't want him to get in trouble for what he did. So there was a story that was formulated that he had me tell the police, and that was I was being suicidal, so he was being aggressive with me to try to save me from myself. And I just wanted to address it to the court that was a false story that was only put in place to try to save him on his end. And after the abuse kept continuing, I said, you know, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to try to cover up for you, because that's what he's been used to over all of these years, even before me. And, you know, Anna and Gage feel like they haven't had gotten their justice either. And
Judge, I'm going to object. We're talking about individuals that are allegedly victims who have nothing to do with this case, and I'm not on any sort of notice. It's frankly 404B, and I don't think it's appropriate.
No, the court will note, I have the cases that are in front of me. Those are the convictions. Those are the sentences before the court. The parties have leave to address what they wish for the court to do.
okay.
As this individual may do so as well. I know, as is typical with the sentencing, this doesn't necessarily solely revolve around the exact parameters of the facts of each of the cases. So
Okay.
there's some leeway here, but that's where my focus is and where probably the most pertinent information would be. So you may resume.
Okay, so just, you know, just plain and short, I just wanted to say that if they were genuine, they wouldn't be bringing up the me being suicidal thing as part of their defense, because that was a whole fabricated story, and the fact that they're using it now as part of his defense shows me that they're not being genuine. So that's just all I wanted to clarify. So thank you.
All right, thank you for addressing the court.
Thank you.
Anything further from the people?
No, thank you, Judge.
Anything further from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
And again, that's just the court procedure that at least I have in this courtroom. I give the defense the last word, so I'm going to come back and see if there's more that the defense wishes to address. It's the defendant's right to allocution that primarily informs that court procedure and the timing of when everybody addresses the court. So you may.
I certainly don't think that the court can judge Mr. Haas's genuineness based on my comments. I'm his attorney. It's my job to put together a sentencing argument based on all the information I have. The court has his statement and can base his genuineness on his statement. What I can tell you is that there were text messages indicating that she wanted to kill herself. There were the police reports. She didn't tell the police that anything about trying to commit suicide. That was the district attorney. Contained in the police reports are an interview with his sister Katie, who told the police that she was on the phone at one point with Mr. Haas.
When he was hitting me.
And she heard her talk about putting a rope around her neck, then was on video chat with Mr. Haas and witnessed her banging her head into the wall. This is all on the day where he put his hands over her mouth. So there is
He put that
support
rope
for that.
around my neck.
It's not something that Mr. Haas made up out of whole cloth, but it is the reality of what was happening at a time when she was not on her lithium, per her own statements.
I've never.
The more neutral parties, I think, have a better
I've never been prescribed
perception
anything.
and recollection of the events as they were occurring that day.
Oh my God.
All of that being true, at the end of the day, Mr. Haas is admitting to you that he was wrong
Dude,
That he
fuck
put his
you.
hands on
Shut
her?
the fuck up.
and that he needs help. And he's done everything he can up to this point while incarcerated to get himself the help that he needs. And we have a program in place to further help him. And that's what we're asking the court to do.
I've never been
Thank you,
prescribed
and-
lithium. That was part of the story he made me
Here
tell
you
the
mentioned
cops.
he's admitting to putting the hands over her mouth. Is there more than that, or is that the extent of the
So
admission?
this was a
of the
physical
facts?
altercation. He was also under the influence and not taking his medications. His recall of it, I think is 100% accurate either. There was a lot of physicality. Did he grab her? Sure. Was that sometimes in response to her doing things to him? Yes. At the end of the day, he is admitting to all sorts of contact. Can we sit and ferret out what was self-defense and what was not? I don't think we can. He upped the ante by putting his hands over her mouth. and acknowledges that the risk that placed her
That's
in
all he did
to
was
something
put his
far
fucking
worse
hand on it.
happening than perhaps some hitting, some scratching, some wrestling around. And if you'd like Mr. Haas to tell you, I'm certain he's going to tell you exactly what I've just said.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for addressing that question. And Mr. Haas, again, you're in the same position you were before. You have a right to address the court. You may do so again if you wish. It's your right to do or not to do, so it's entirely your choice.
You know, I like I said, I'd like to take full accountability for my actions and, you know, address the fact that I do apologize to Jaylene, and, you know, I wish them the best. I wish my son the best. I wish that I can get, you know, on the right track so that hopefully one day I can be in his life and be a role model, because I
You
know
got
he's
me
gonna
Be a
deal
role
with the
model.
same problems as me. And I don't wish this on anybody. I don't wish what happened on anybody. And
Fuck you,
I
dude.
I regret fully in my heart everything that happened.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh my god.
I'll start part of where we left off, which is with genuineness and Mr. Haas, and, you know, to what degree the court might accept his allocution and acceptance of responsibility, and to what degree he feels that versus is, you know, may sometimes, I mean, you know, I'm not naive. Sometimes it may be the case that people just say those things and don't mean them. I don't perceive that here. I think he is being genuine when he addresses his desire to change, his desire for recovery. And I think that is an important piece of what the court should consider in mitigation, and the court does so here. I'll start by mentioning what I am here to do, and maybe part of what I'm not here to do. In this kind of proceeding, we will not ultimately resolve all facts, everything that happened. There's not going to be a trial where we hear everything about every circumstance and every mitigating factor that's within those facts and every aggravating factor that's within those facts. We just don't get that quite much of a complete piece of the factual background when there's a plea, and that's okay, because what we do have is the convictions, and that's always where my analysis starts, because the convictions really tell me what the conduct is that is admitted to, accepted, and for which the individual has pled guilty. In 19 CR 2331, it's a third-degree assault, Class 1 misdemeanor, and a Class 3 misdemeanor, false reporting. In 21 CR 581, Class 3 misdemeanor, reckless endangerment, Class 3 misdemeanor, criminal mischief, and violation of bail bond conditions, which is a felony. In 20 CR 2625, there's a Class 4 felony and it's second-degree assault involving strangulation. It's also unlawful sexual contact, a Class 1 misdemeanor. So that's where the court starts in the analysis. It's always important to consider mitigating and aggravating circumstances, and the people have described some of the statutory factors that go into the analysis, and the court's always mindful of those. Largely, they break down into punitive measures and rehabilitative measures. The mitigating factors before the court, it is clear that Mr. Haas suffers from mental illness, that he's wanting to address that. He's placed himself in a position to hope to address that on probation. He has a substance abuse addiction that is clearly part of the diagnosis there, and something for him to work toward and to work on that could better him in the future, and he could progress with. He has family support and community support, including here in the courtroom, and they've addressed the court and are willing to help and to do transportation and to be there for him. He's clearly a capable individual with a bachelor's degree in a highly skilled field that's very marketable, so he could contribute to society and help support himself, support his family, as long as he can get that treatment where he can keep himself in that kind of position for that opportunity.
There's no fucking way, dude.
And he has one prior felony, which is not a great fact, but it's not an extensive criminal history of the kind that the court might see in other cases. So in terms of degrees, only having one prior felony is a more limited criminal history than the court sees in many cases. And finally, he's done the work to arrange this Christ Life Ministries, and that does sound like a very great program, a great opportunity, and he's done the work to arrange
Dude,
that
there's no fucking way.
along with, I think, probably counsel and others, but he's done the work to arrange that and to make sure that he can go there. There are aggravating factors too. The court must also address those. The victim impact here, and the court always considers the victim and victim impact, and I appreciate hearing from her. It's clear that there's a high degree of impact here, including to this day, fear remaining with her, and concern over what's going to happen, and concern over the facts that happened in the past, and how that still impacts her here today. The facts of the case, I agree, are generally aggravated. In particular, the 20 CR, well, the 21 as well, has some challenging facts. Part of the reason for the court's question regarding placing a hand over the mouth is it strikes the court it doesn't necessarily support a second-degree assault strangulation conviction, nor does it support an unlawful sexual contact conviction. And the facts, as alleged in that case, go well beyond placing hands on a mouth. So the court wanted to inquire whether, beyond simply stating so, there was acceptance of those additional very, very concerning facts. But the facts are particularly concerning. The allegations are being there in a dark place, surprising the victim. She's pregnant at the time, strangulation, and a sexual assault, or at least unlawful sexual contact as to the plea. Those are concerning. In the 21 CR case, it involves the same victim. And again, also very concerning facts. The probation's in place for both of these. It's worth mentioning. He's on bond at the time in the 21 CR. The people mentioned, and the court agrees, I just, not being under the jurisdiction of the court for a full year and a half is a great concern when we consider something like probation. I mean, he was on probation again in the 19 CR cases. These cases arose. There are multiple felonies sort of accumulated at once, including the one in Kansas. Sounds like that's not as troubling in terms of the facts. It was a controlled substance, but still of concern that these cases all sort of accumulate. There are at least some domestic violence concern here, and the court's mindful of the terms and conditions on page 16 involving the sex offense that would be required if there is a probationary sentence. I think what the court must view is the seriousness of the cases, and also the degree to which the facts before the court would indicate to the court a likelihood of success on probation. And I think on both of those measures, probation is just not something that could work in these circumstances. And the court must sentence to the Department of Corrections.
Yeah. Oh, I just got.
I do think the facts are aggravated. I do think Mr. Haas has placed himself in a position to do some mitigation against that. I know that there's a cap and agreement of 8 years. And I do think that that agreement and cap ultimately probably encapsulates exactly where this case probably should end up in terms of the time. The court's in agreement with 8 years in the Department of Corrections.
Fuck.
So 20 CR 2625, 8 years in the Department of Corrections on the Class 4 felony. On the Class 1 misdemeanor, it will be to 18 months jail to be served at Department of Corrections. Those are concurrent with one another. 19 CR 2331, Mr. Haas has 288 days of credit. Court will sentence to 288 days in jail with 288 days of pre-sentence confinement credit. In 21 CR 581, the Class 6 felony, court will sentence to 15 months in the Department of Corrections. On that count, there's 2 Class 3 misdemeanors. It'll be 6 months jail on each count. Each of those counts is concurrent with one another, and also concurrent to 20 CR 2625. So the total is 8 years. Finally, in terms of pre-sentence confinement credit, the PSI reports 284 days of pre-sentence confinement credit that will be awarded in 20 CR 2625 and in 21 CR 581 to 275 days of pre-sentence confinement credit. Is there any motion for restitution?
Your Honor, the people would reserve 91 days, please.
Court does enter an order of restitution in 20 CR 2625, 21 CR 581. People may file a motion to identify the appropriate amount, if appropriate, within 91 days. If there's objection thereafter, the court will either resolve the question or we will schedule a hearing if one is needed in order to resolve any such amount. I appreciate the involvement of all parties who have addressed the court here today and the attendance of all the individuals. Appreciate the input from the victim. I wish you well moving forward. Appreciate the input from the family members. And Mr. Haas, I wish you well moving forward as well. Anything else today for the people
No, thank you, Judge.
or for the defense? Okay, not hearing anything. Thank you all for your appearances.